Goat. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Chris.
Hello, Chris.
I'm shouting today, baby, from the rooftops.
Where
for the goats.
For the goats. Where? Anything causing you to shout? Is it the fact that we're reviewing an episode that just ages so well on so many levels?
Yeah, this is a tough one. Let's see how it goes. Let's see if we cancel ourselves.
We always talk about how forward-thinking certain aspects of the Andy Griffith Show were. This is not one. This episode is not one of them. Not
even a little bit.
Yeah.
Looking forward to doing it. Can we double our listenership for this? Let's have a viral moment.
A viral moment. Well, before we get started, I wanted to give a shout out to a guy named Emery Nichols, who took the time to write us and said he'd found our podcast and he had really enjoyed it and he had watched it and he's basically listened to it and is up to date. So thank you for listening, Emery, and thank you for taking the time to tell us.
And thank you for your family's commitment to higher education in the Atlanta area with Emory University.
He's actually from Auburn, Alabama, so maybe they're committed to higher education in the Auburn.
Go War Eagle. Go War
Eagle. Yes. All right, so you any opening thoughts before we dive in?
No, this is racist.
You're not even going to mince words here, huh?
No, this is racist.
That's fair. I mean, it's.
You want to know how many whistles I give it?
the episode or the scenes.
We can do that at the end. I'll hold back.
All right, you got your hot take about you're not even mincing words about it was a different time or anything like that. You're like, no, this is racist, and I respect what you're saying. I'm going to tell you my hot take. John Masters, worst choir director, worst theater director in North Carolina, to say
I think that's totally fair. He did a lot of stuff in the northern part of the state, and I wonder why.
Apparently, he's got a reputation. But I mean, if you're going to kick people out, don't turn it over to a loved one. Do it yourself. And don't give people parts and then take them away. And don't give people parts without having them read. I mean, I understand it's a very offensive. It can be a very sensitive thing for actors who are saying, I still have to read. But if Aunt B hasn't been on stage in about 40 years, she should probably have to read.
Hey, and you know what? These people are not Tom Cruise. Like, Tom Cruise doesn't have to read. But Sissy Spacek probably has to read.
Sissy Spacek does not have to read.
I was just trying to think of someone. I was trying to think of someone that's not like a blockbuster hit star. I know Sissy Spacek won Best Actress in 1980. I know that she was a thing, but she's not putting out Mission Impossible, right? And so I don't think it's unreal to ask anybody to read that's just below that A-list level. So Adam Sandler, would have to read.
You always got to ding Adam Sandler. But I think what I would say is Tom Cruise didn't have to read, and everybody who was returning for the new Mission Impossible movie did not have to read. Everybody who was new probably had to read.
I would bet so.
Yeah. So we open with Andy and Opie. Well, actually, we'll say this episode first aired on November 30th, 1964.
Have we said the name of the episode?
Oh, I'm sorry. The name of the episode is The Pageant.
Okay.
So make sure we're talking about the same one. So there's not another episode that you think is racist. It's this episode, right?
I was talking about the eponymous episode of this podcast, The Loaded Goat.
Oh, The Loaded Goat, or Opie the Birdman. Really, just racist. No, I mean I get what you're saying. This episode we'll need to break down what we're talking about as we dive in. So we open with Andy and Opie posting the sign for the Mayberry Centennial Pageant, and Opie mispronounces Centennial. And Barney comes out to school Opie about how it derives from the Latin word centum, and Andy explains that it is applied to other words like century and centipede. But Barney doesn't believe people from that era worried about naming bugs. So there you go.
I like the science. Good, solid opening.
Yeah. Andy Griffith was actually in a miniseries called Centennial in the 70s. I've watched it several times. It's a very good miniseries about the 200-year history or 200-plus year history of a town in Colorado.
Got it. I'm glad he was in that and not another movie that has to do with centipedes.
Like The Human Centipede?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that would have been a real bad way for Andy Griffith to wind down his career.
It really would have.
Yeah. Have you ever seen The Human Centipede?
No, but I get the gist.
I've seen the first one. and the first one is pretty bad, but it is really a kick in the back. And you'd really have no idea why this doctor wanted to create the human centipede. But when the strongest person in the movie is trying to get away, he's like, he catches her. He goes, you know what? You're the strongest one here of all of them. You get to be the middle of the human centipede, which is the worst place to be. So it's a tough watch.
It is. Well, I'm glad you watched it so that we don't have to.
Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Pod Machine. Podcast to speak to you wherever you are.
The human centipede, yeah, probably not for folks. So Andy asks Barney if he's going to be involved in the pageant, like to act in the pageant celebrating the anniversary. And Barney says he's had speech training from Miss Poultice, and that's where he learned his diction. And then he does Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers really quickly, along with some others. And then he and Opie go off in a diction contest, and Andy and Opie finally stump him.
Did I ever tell you the one that the tongue twister I came up with this fall?
I think you did one that you tried to get me to say on this podcast. I was like, no, I'm not going to get it. You're trying to just lure me into saying a bad word.
Well, yeah, but this is kind of that. But I think it's more. It's funny, with Kristen Welker taking over Meet the Press. Is this a reminder? How many Todds could a Chuck Todd chuck if a Chuck Todd could chuck Todds?
Oh, that's a pretty good one.
It's a hard one.
Yeah, I'm not even going to try.
I'm a big fan of Chuck Todd, so this is more of an homage to him.
You're well, we're trying not to get political, but you're delving here, man.
What, really? And Chuck Todd, longest running show in news.
Was Chuck Todd or Meet the Press the longest running show in news?
Well, Meet the Press featuring Chuck Todd.
Yeah, but that's Meet the Press is, there's been plenty of other broadcasters who've been on longer than Chuck Todd.
Oh, I know that. Like Bill Maher. Anti-writer's strike, Bill Maher. Are we allowed to do this? Are we part of the union?
We're not part of the union. Okay. We're not in the Writers Guild. It's Is
that because I don't write anything down?
You don't write anything down, and you don't have a union card, as I don't either.
Okay, got it.
And we're not getting paid for this.
Not even a little bit.
Not even a little bit. And but I really know that you don't watch any of the news. You get all your news from the Daily Show.
The Daily Show is good.
It's entertaining. I was just giving you a hard time.
You were.
Yeah. So Andy comes in and Opie asks, basically Andy comes in and Opie has picked up her baking powder so she can make brownies. And Andy and Opie ask if she is going to try out for Lady Mayberry. And she says she's going to do the sewing for the event.
They also really overhype. Like I love my hometown. I feel a lot of hometown pride. I think of it as a we. It is like, it feels like a personified community. I would not go to anything or care about it if it were about Lady Helena, if that were a person that existed.
I like Waiting for Guffman, that movie. Have you seen Waiting for Guffman?
I've not seen Godot, but I have seen Guffman.
Okay, Waiting for Guffman. Obviously has a lot of funny lines, and most of it's all about the cast of characters that they have trying to make this production about what happened in Blaine, Missouri. But it is kind of one of these things where you are like, well, it is just kind of like if people are telling the story of your town, you're kind of like, how's it going to be told and who's going to be doing it? And this is an old school, we're going to do this of Lady Mayberry, and we're going to do a not authentic in any way, shape, or form meeting between the settlers and the Native Americans. I feel like this production had some real, it was kind of behind the eight ball as it was coming out of the gate. It was not going to be memorable.
Yeah, I agree. Quick thing about Waiting for Guffman. Ricky Gervais found that was a heavy influence on his writing of The Office. And Christopher Guest is one of his icons and how he created that structure and style that we see so often replicated in modern sitcoms. Yeah,
we do. Well, that's good to know. I mean, that movie has some laugh out loud moments.
LOL.
So back at the Taylor household, Aunt B is discussing how she used to act. She goes to get a book. Are you taking your shirt off here?
Hot.
Okay.
No one's supposed to know unless
for those who are we're on camera. Those who are listening here, he's still wearing a t-shirt, so it's okay. So Aunt B is discussing how she used to act. She goes to get a book to show like her past performances. Opie's not interested at all. He asks if she's going to put some conventionary sugar on the brownies, and Aunt B does it very funny, does a very good realistic, and she just giggles and says, or chuckles and says, confectionery sugar. And then she tries to
always
reform.
The jokester.
Oh yeah,
she's as sweet as sucrose.
She's trying to show him the book of her performances, and all Opie is focused on is the brownies. And she decides she's going to go for the part. And on stage, Andy is playing a settler, and Barney is playing a Native American chief.
They were also terrible.
Oh yeah, they're terrible, both of them. And they take a break. Now, do you feel like?
Yeah, not a good start to it. No. I mean, for starters, just representation, right? Like, if you're actually going to tell the story about the founding of the town, which odds are good it had some strong, violent colonialist vibes, and it wasn't so much, we're going to be over there, it'll be safe. You know, you could get a little bit more representative actors versus, this is a very white telling of the history of Mayberry, which there's no way, shape, or form that's actually what it was.
Do you find the broken English to be to be a little offensive?
I do. Thank you for asking. And we addressed this in the karate episode as well. So there has been a history of, in season 5, maybe Harvey Bullock getting a little shooting at the hip a little bit on some cultural representation.
I will actually say on this, I don't think anybody really knew what they were doing, and I don't even think it was even something that was put to top of mind for people like it is today.
Oh, I think, yeah. We're looking back, so we'll give some grace there, but we're also not wrong in judging how it came across. Just because, it's like the great I'm an enlightened human being, Aaron. Just look at me,
I don't feel like I'm looking at an enlightened human being. I feel like I'm looking at a human being. But that's all I can really verify.
My white undershirt isn't helping.
No, the fact that you
look, I got like a little hipster mustache. I got glasses. I look enlightened.
You look like you're ironic, and you don't even know what the word ironic means.
I know the song, which has got to count for something.
Yeah, there you go. So, all right. So this is not going well. They
recording or the episode.
Both, but let's focus on the episode. The episode is
brought to you by Pod Machine.
The point on all of this is it's not a good production to begin with, regardless of whether it ages well or not. It was not a good production for 1964. It's pretty lousy. And I take a break, and Aunt B goes to discuss the role of Lady Mayberry with John Masters. And he perks up and he talks about how important it is, and that he knows she will sew just the right outfit for Clara Edwards.
Can you imagine sewing an outfit for one of your friends and not getting credit as like a Christmas gift? Not for me.
Well, first of all, the notion of I don't know. There's a Cosby show where Denise says she's going to sew what they call like Gordon Gautreaux or something like that. This really designer shirt. I think it's a takeoff on Calvin Klein, and she's going to sew it for Theo. And it is the worst shirt imaginable. It's like one sleeve is halfway up the arm, one sleeve is too long. I mean, she's done a terrible job with it. And I feel like if I sewed anything, that's what it would be like. I don't even know if it'd be wearable. It wouldn't even be wearable. So
absolutely not. It's not my skill set.
Yeah. So the fact that Aunt B can do this is pretty remarkable. And it's weird. It's like all of a sudden you're like, Aunt B wants to be on stage as Lady Mayberry, but we never knew this. But you would think John Masters, after spending so much time in northern part of North Carolina, directing theater and choirs would have good emotional intelligence.
You would think so.
But apparently he does not.
Mm-mm.
And so later, John and Barney...
if I've said one thing about the South, let me say this.
What? Yeah, you dive right in there. What you got to say?
Let me just alienate my other my lesser host, and then all of our listeners.
Yeah. What have you got to say, Bubba? Just tell me what you're thinking.
Just good people.
Yeah, I'd stop right there. So later, John and Barney and Andy come in dejected, and Clara has had to bow out because her sister got sick, and so she's got to go be with her. And Andy,
already a loose excuse, though. We don't know what she's sick with. We find out later she hasn't been gone long. I think this was made up. I think she was visiting. She was maybe seeing a fella in a different town. Didn't want to tell anybody.
And she just needed a little time to get away. And let's face it, Claire can do Lady Mayberry in her sleep.
You can tell just by looking at her.
Yeah, I mean that woman is late. When you see her, you're like, Lady. Oh yeah, Mayberry.
She's Lady Mayberry.
She is Lady Mayberry. And so Aunt Bee starts to make a subtle play for the role, and they keep talking past her, except Andy, who gets the idea to offer her the role. They offer it to her, and she accepts. No audition, no nothing. Apparently her theater work in the 1920s is all that was needed.
I did one show a year growing up at a community theater, and one time I was gone out of town for auditions, so the director told me to just come for callbacks. And at callbacks, it's like when you're kind of doing cold readings of different scenes, and you get it like 30 minutes before so you can practice. And I show up, and she's like, all right, meet me downstairs in 5 minutes. You can do your monologue and song. And I was like, well, I don't know, have a monologue and song. I kind of thought we were going to be doing the scene thing. And I tried, and I got about halfway through the monologue. Worked well. I became an ensembleman.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Everybody gets cast, which is also an important note.
Okay, well, it's like you made the soccer team when you were in the second grade.
I got most improved player on the soccer team. Talk about a backhanded compliment. They gave me a little plaque too. It's humiliating.
Hey, sometimes it's really about how much effort you put forward, and people are, it's if you come in and you're an amazing athlete, you're coming in kind of ahead of folks. But if you work your way into still being productive, there's something to be said for that.
There is publicly in a banquet at a cheap conference hall while everybody's parents applaud.
There you go. I hope you felt good at the time.
No, I was like, this is weird. I want to go home.
I'm sorry.
I want to go to the taco bar. We digress.
I'm sorry to hear that. So Andy comes into rehearsal, and they share the news article about Aunt Bee, and that she was known or remembered for some work she did in West Virginia playing a little princess in the 1920s.
Was this the Little Princess, like the Little Princess, Little Princess?
I don't think so. I think it was another play.
Got it. Okay. Great movie.
I've never seen it.
Oh, it's fun. I mean, I don't remember it. I saw it when I was 7 and remembered liking it.
And you're not thinking of The Little Mermaid, right? You're thinking of The Little Princess.
Definitely thinking of The Little Princess. Thank you for asking.
All right, I just want to make sure. We cut to Barney and Andy doing a scene where Andy is wearing a fur hat and Barney is wearing a Native American chief's headdress, and they are smoking a peace pipe. Okay, so I know this doesn't fly today. Did you chuckle at how ridiculous they looked?
No, I was like, what the heck am I going to say about this flawed scene to a bunch of people who like the episode?
You didn't even say, okay, they look so silly.
They do look silly, but not as a comedic act because they were, dressed up like this. Because it's just, I don't know, man. I'm having a hard time not looking at it with my my enlightened man persona, that we previously agreed was true.
The most your enlightened persona. Maybe it's of all the enlightened personas I know, yours is the most improved. So after some bad acting, Barney takes a puff and starts coughing. And I thought that was funny. That was funny. And Barney pushes back on some dialogue that he doesn't think sounds right. And in a show of really trying to really push for authenticity, a bunch of white guys come together and discuss what sounds accurate.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
I know.
I did think you remove the racism from it. I did think the writer's pompous air de pompons was very accurate for a lot of theatrical people. I thought he captured that well. Looking at you, Jeff.
I think he captured. Yeah, I think so. I think just the fact of it is that nobody even knew. Nobody even said 60 years from now, this enlightened young man will be breaking this down on the podcast, and he will be calling us a bunch of racists. We didn't even think, because they didn't even realize that's how they would be perceived.
Yeah, and I'm here to, dispel that myth.
I'm just.
But hear me out. Actors are sculptors who carve in snow. So they thought it was going to melt away, and we're here to make sure that it's not.
Okay, I'm just. I can't deal with any more of this pretentious silliness, but let's keep going here. So they finish the scene, and next up is Aunt Bee doing her scene as Lady Mayberry. And Barney won't lose the headdress so he can stay in character. And Aunt Bee can't find the way to enter. And when she finally does enter, she is not good. Christopher, you grew up in the theater, and you're an enlightened man. What's her problem here? I mean, what are all her issues as an actress right now?
We're talking Bee walking in.
Yeah.
She didn't. So this actually goes a little bit to the production. No one called places. So she should have been told 5 minutes before, places in 10. She'd say, thank you, 10. And then again at 5. And then the stage manager or director absent would say places. And then she would go. She would know where she needed to be backstage so that she was ready to take the stage and not fumble around in the curtain where she's going to get that she has so much hairspray in that hairdo that she's getting static electricity up there. Her head is not firing, right? Because there's too much energy in her head that she's not going to be able to deliver. And I would say, if we're going to compare her delivery to Barney and Andy's, Aunt Bee was actually a little bit better because she's closer to the persona. She is cast better than Andy and Barney were in their characters. She's closer to the persona that they're playing. So just by the nature of her being herself is going to be a better performance. A la very similar to, thank you very much, Leonardo DiCaprio in The Revenant.
You had me going until you brought up The Revenant.
I know. I think about The Revenant for a really. Will you indulge me for a moment?
Always.
So that was when he got Best Actor, and there was this whole narrative that Leo had been snubbed. He was the Boston Red Sox to the World Series to Best Actor. He would never get it, and I remember reading on Facebook this guy that I kind of barely knew everyone was going on and saying Leo needs to win best actor. Leo needs to win Best Actor. And this guy Scott gets on and posts this long Facebook post about whether or not he delivered the best performance. It's not if he's owed it, if he delivered. And it was a fire and brimstone Facebook post that I think about quite often for how ridiculous he got worked up about this. And then Leo won, and that also made me happy in context of that Facebook post. Or should I say meta? Can we slice in meta over Facebook now?
Yes.
Okay.
So I see that there's a lot of people. I will agree with you that the Oscars, the Grammys, the Tonys, the Emmys, they should all go to the best performance. I feel like, especially.
You're not agreeing with me. You're agreeing with Scott.
What do you think?
I don't really care. I thought it was cool. I want whoever's going to give the best speech. I think Larry David should win everything.
I mean, that would be great. I mean, I would, Jiminy.
What if you had an award ceremony where they set it up and Larry David, like as a host, they add Larry David to the nominees for every single one, and anytime someone's not there to accept the award, Larry David goes up and accepts on their behalf.
I would love that, and I would love it if he would rotate. It would be Larry David. And then if Larry David's busy or, he's already accepted an award for somebody else, they send Jiminy Glick up to.
Who's Jiminy Glick?
Jiminy Glick is this Martin Short character that he's the overweight guy who's always interviewing the stars, and he's saying making all of these ridiculous questions. Like he'll sit down with, he did a really funny interview with Ice Cube, and he goes, "I am so happy to have Vanilla Ice with me."
Oh, you told me about that. Yeah. Okay.
And so it's just really funny.
Okay. Yeah, I'm all for that. Yeah. You could have also like the Ollie G. Or Ollie G, I think his show was the Ollie G show. Yeah. You'd have all of these different character actors get Weird Al there for some reason. You know, that could be fun.
Yeah, I think you could have a good time with that.
You get Keenan to play I don't know, doesn't he play Steve Harvey quite a bit on SNL? You could have
my favorite, he does that one. My favorite is when he's doing movie things. It's where he's doing lost cinema classics or lost scenes in movies, and he's like, "I'm Reese." To what? And that's his name. Where he's like, and they're doing like a lost scene from The Birds or Casablanca. Those are always fun. So that all being said, you break down that I do agree with you. Brass tacks, Aunt B is given an unfair shake, but she is actually better in her role than Barney and Andy when it comes to just delivering and being accurate.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But that doesn't matter because John, Andy, and Barney agree that Aunt B is terrible as we go to commercial.
They should have brought Opie in on this too. John, Andy, Opie, and Barney.
Do we see Opie in this episode? I don't think we do. Oh, yeah, we do. Yeah, we do.
She reads to him in that one scene.
Yeah, you're right. This episode was produced by Pod Machine. They do a great podcast at a great rate. I was fortunate to get started on this a few years ago, and I've just been very, very pleased with it ever since. I mean, they will edit your podcast. They will do artwork for your podcast. They'll do the YouTube videos for the podcast, and they have a very quick turnaround time once you upload all your material. So I highly recommend it.
I'm pro pod in general. I love bean pods. I like pod hotels. I like pod apples, maybe. But you know what pods I like best? Pod machines.
Pod machines. Me too.
I like them better than podcasts. I honestly don't even really like podcasts that much. So I'm just thankful that you're here.
Why do you do this podcast?
To see your dimples, baby.
To see my dimples. Well, and if you really push hard, my Pod Machine might be able to give you some dimples. I don't know. So go to podmachine.com to learn more and enter Loaded Goat at checkout for a 10% discount.
And that's spelled just like Loaded Goat.
And after the break, John says he has to let her go, but he can't have the production go haywire. And then he says, Andy, I think it'd be better if you tell her. And I'm like, what?
This is just a common thing that the writers always do to fill time. Is they're like, he could address it, but no, they're like, oh, let's make the star of the show do it.
Yeah. And
it does not help Andy's megalomania.
Which do you think he suffers from?
I actually don't think the character does, but I would venture to say maybe Andy Griffith did.
I don't know if he suffered from megalomania. I hear he did have a bit of a temper, and he had a long memory.
All right, so let's break down those things. Mega, temper, low, long, mania, memory.
No.
Okay.
This is one area where you're not enlightened.
Wow. All right.
So, as we've said it before, and I'll say it again, it's John's just not stepping up here. Barney calls the theater Heartbreak Alley, and then back at the Taylor household, Aunt B is practicing with Opie, and Andy comes in, and she says John doesn't really understand Lady Mayberry, and she's not sure about working with him. And Andy's like, well, if you don't think I like working with him, you don't have to waste your time doing this part. And Aunt B says she wouldn't give up this part for anything in the world.
I get that. I'm not going to say that, we think that John is maybe lackluster in some areas. These are just such subjective things that no one's going to be right or no one's going to be wrong. It's like you put together a PowerPoint and people are like, that looks bad. You should move this one thing there. Hey, that's subjective. That's not necessarily the right answer. Alicia. Working some things out. I'm working some things out.
I'm sorry you're going through that. Did you have somebody who didn't like your PowerPoint?
Alicia actually makes super solid PowerPoints, and I'm pretty bad at it. So thanks, Alicia. Really appreciate working with you.
I mean, I think I do think there are certain things that are subjective on certain areas. I mean, I do think
taxes, hand grenades, horseshoes, liberal and conservative ideology.
I think more or less we're talking about
Marxism.
I'm not even going to play along here. What we're talking about, I think we can all agree on what is good acting and what we can agree with is bad acting.
Yeah, Adam Sandler.
Oh man,
All right, I'll stop busting your chops. You can go.
Your beef with Adam Sandler. So she just says she wouldn't give up this role for anything in the world and heads to practice. And Andy doesn't have the heart to tell her. John calls and tells Andy that Clara is back in town. Apparently, she had a 48-hour bug or something like that. I don't know. Her sister must not have really been all that sick. And then he insists that Andy tell Aunt B. And I'm just going to say it before I've said it earlier. John Masters is just not a stage director. He's not a leader.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's actually a great way to put it. He's not a leader. It's indicated here, and then it's reflected in his work.
Yeah. And then Opie tells Andy he's getting tired of eating diner food. And
said no eight-year-old kid ever.
No 8-year-old kid, year-old kid ever. Maybe says no adult ever. I mean, for the most part, you're like, diner food. Okay, I'm all about that. And then Andy gets an idea and says he is too. And if they can't break it to Aunt B that she's not a good actress, they're just going to basically use some good old-fashioned manipulation.
As always works in this show with Aunt B. It's how every Aunt B episode ends, right? Yeah. They're like, oh, we can manipulate her out of this.
About her role, basically taking the one thing she takes complete and utter pride and confidence in and just kind of poking and kind of just needling it a little bit.
Yeah, it goes straight to her psyche. They know exactly what they're doing. They know how to play this game.
Yeah. So we cut to Aunt B going over a list of things she has to do as Andy and Barney eat breakfast. Clara rings the doorbell and Andy says he asked her to come over since she is so busy. Clara says she'll make apple pie for them every night.
Ooh.
Aunt B starts to get upset. I don't know if she's jealous or just uncomfortable. And she says she needs to get going and work on the opening speech. And Clara just performs the speech with ease, and Aunt B leaves. I kind of want to smack everybody in this scene.
I would like to see you do that.
I don't really want to smack everybody.
Now that would be a good director. That's like, I was just reading a profile in Rolling Stone for a couple weeks ago about what a bad, toxic work environment Jimmy Fallon leads at the Tonight Show. And you could be a director like that, and you go in and you belittle people, you berate them personally with passive-aggressive comments about whether or not they're okay, not even disregard their work style and what the product they put out. And you could do that, and you'd be the opposite of John McMasters, and it would be McMasters. I keep thinking, I was like, that sounds familiar, but I'm thinking, remember that old man that like ran, what was it, Egg Department a couple years ago?
No, he wasn't. You talking about HR McMasters?
HR McMasters. Yeah, Defense.
Yeah, it was not Defense. You're talking about the former National Security Advisor.
Yeah, like I said, Ag Department. I always get those two confused.
Yeah. So basically, Aunt B starts to leave. Clara's in the kitchen, and Aunt B comes back in and asks Clara to go do the role. They hug, and Clara goes back to practice, and Aunt B comes in and says she is going to cook. She doesn't want anyone in her kitchen, and Clara is a better actress. And Andy is just so moved by Aunt B's, selflessness, and we go to commercial.
Beautiful.
This is like one where I was like, ugh.
Yeah. I mean, I was pretty done with this episode by the time we got to this part. So I was like, all right, cool. Roll the credits.
All right. Well, so in the epilogue, Clara gives a speech, and Barney and Andy discuss how she is a great actress. And Barney says it comes naturally to some people. Just then, Barney sees another actor coming out in his headdress, and it turns out John has given his part away and not told him. And Barney chases him off the stage as we close.
It happens to the I don't even know the metaphor for this. Sucks to suck.
All right, so how many whistles would you give this?
3, man. I don't know. Like, it's just not good. Doesn't age well. But I really like talking about it. So that's where I'm coming in.
I gave Bargain Day 4. I think I'm going to give this 4.
All right. Sounds good.
Any final thoughts?
No, I hope that you continue to see light in your life and that each day gets progressively better.
I hope that you continue to become the most improved when it comes to being enlightened.
Oh.
For everyone else, thanks for listening to this slog of an episode. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. And if you think about it, subscribe. Next week, we'll do The Darling Baby. Until then, Christopher, how fast can you say Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers?
Chuck Todd, Chucks, Chuck Todds.